Hello everyone, Namaskar. Now in this 59th lecture of the course, today we shall discuss various aspects of FSSAI regulations and FSMS guidelines for fruits, vegetables, spices and plantation crops. Here we will discuss FSSAI regulations and product standards, that is major products from fruits and vegetables, spices, etc. Also we will throw some light on spice adulteration, then food safety management system, and finally we will discuss HACCP implementation and CCPs. Okay. You know that Food Safety and Standard Authority of India has been constituted and which has the authority to decide various rules, regulations, quality standards, safety standards, etc. for about food products. Okay. And these FSSAI, which is commonly known as that these FSSAI guidelines or regulations are mandatory in nature. So, every food business operator or food manufacturer has to follow the FSSAI guidelines. So, FSSAI has certain norms for deciding or defining the safety and quality standards. Okay. There are various kinds of descriptions of each quality parameters which are taken into consideration in the FSSAI regulations. Okay. And these are important to have a same type of standard for a product. Okay. So, the defined criteria for the safety standards or quality standards include description or definition of the products. Here it describes the product definition for having a detailed know-how for the food processors. Then quality factors, which describes the quality related to packing, sensory, nutritional, etc. Okay. And these are detail of the products. Then labeling, this includes tag, brand, mark, pictorial or other descriptive matters of the products regarding to packaging and its labeling. And then finally, limitations of quality attributes, values, that is the limit, what the limit they state, and this value this includes the range of the quality attributes, values of the products, and these are decided on the basis of a very thorough scientific considerations and scientific discussion by the committees. Okay. So, in the FSSAI guideline, particularly if you talk about fruits and vegetable products, they have come up with certain standards for various processed fruits and vegetable products. For example, in this slide I have given some thermally processed vegetables and fruit. Their criteria, for example, in canned tomatoes, the pH should be greater than 4.5. Okay. It should have that if the calcium chloride is being used as a firming agent. So, total calcium ion, it should be less than 0.045%, and sodium chloride in packing, it should be less than 3%. So, these are the major things. Just I am telling you all these values which I am telling, these are the indicative that they are the FSSAI guidelines. But if you go and look at the FSSAI website, you will find the details of various aspects. Okay, I have just given major points here. Similarly, in the case of tomato juice, its TSS should be less than 0.05% exclusive of salt. Sodium chloride should be less than 3% by weight, and sugar content should be less than 42%. Titratable acidity should be less than 10%, and volatile acidity should be less than 0.4%, and pH should be less than 4.5. Similarly, in the case of vegetable soups, they can be fermented or unfermented. The TSS should be less than 5%, except for tomato soup where it is less than 7%. In the case of fruit beverages, they should contain TSS less than 10%, and fruit juice content, that is in the case of lime and lemon, it should be less than 5%, and for all other fruits, it should be less than 10%. Then thermally processed fruit juices, if you see that the type that is orange juice, it should contain TSS, that is whether they are freshly expressed or reconstituted from concentrate. The TSS should minimum should be 10% and acidity should be maximum 3.5% citric acid. Okay. In apple juice, same value, that is the TSS less than 10%, minimum 10% and acidity expressed as citric acid maximum 3.5, and in the case of apple juice, acidity is expressed as percent malic acid, should be maximum 3.5. Similarly, the lemon juice TSS should be 5% minimum and acidity also, that is the pH should be 4 minimum. Then similarly, the grape juice, whether it is freshly expressed or reconstituted, it should have TSS minimum that 15% and the acidity expressed as citric acid minimum 3.5. Okay. And pineapple juice or even other fruit spices, whether they are single or they are in combination with different species, the pH or the acidity should be around 3.5% maximum and the TSS may be 10% minimum. Okay. In the case of lemon juice, it is the TSS minimum is 6% and acidity maximum is acidity is this 4% minimum. Okay. So, also for thermally processed fruit nectars, you can see except for the orange nectar or pineapple nectar, which contains minimum fruit juice about 40%, other these fruit nectars, they have minimum fruit juice content 20%, minimum TSS 15% and maximum acidity expressed as citric acid is 1.5%. Similarly, in the case of processed mango pulp, sweetened mango pulp, TSS should be more than or equal to 15%, unsweetened mango pulp, TSS should be more than or equal to 12%. Acidity as citric acid for sweetened canned mango pulp should be more than or equal to 0.3%. Okay. Other pulp other than mango, total soluble solids should be less than 6%, acidity as citric acid should be less than 0.3%. Okay. Then this thermally processed concentrated fruit vegetable juices, pulps and purees, okay, that is the tomato puree and paste. It means that unfermented product which is capable of fermentation obtained by concentrating the juice of the sound ripe tomato or to the desired concentration. It may contain salt and other ingredients suitable to the products. Or tomato puree and paste must have TSS content less than 9% and 25% respectively. In soup powder, the moisture content should be not less than 5%. The total soluble solids should not be less than 5%. Okay. The moisture content of fruit bar or toffee should not be more than 20%. The total soluble solids should not be less than 75%, or fruit content should not be less than 25% in bars and toffees. Okay. In the fruits and vegetable flakes, the moisture content should not be more than 20%. The acid insoluble as should be more than 0.5% and starch content should be more than 25%. Similarly, squashes, crushes, fruit syrups, fruit sarbat and barley etc., the minimum percentage of fruit juice puree of the final product as well as total soluble solids minimum or acidity expressed as citric acid, that is the maximum is given in this table. For example, squash should contain minimum 25% juice, total soluble solids minimum 40% and acidity as percent citric acid should be more than 3.5. Okay. Even fruit syrup or fruits sarbat should have again 25%, minimum fruit juice, 65% total soluble solid minimum, and 3.5% acidity as citric acid. Okay. In the case of culinary paste, fruits and vegetable sauces other than tomato sauce, that is the total soluble solids, okay, minimum or mass by mass alpha basis or acidity percent is given here in this table. For example, chili sauce, okay, whether it is made for any fruits or vegetable, it should not contain less than 8% total soluble solids and not less than 1% acidity. In ginger paste, not less than 3% total soluble solids and not less than 1% acidity. Okay. Then the carbonated fruit beverages or fruit drinks, here the product shall have the color, taste and flavor characteristics of the product and the product shall be free from extraneous matter. In case of quantity of fruit juice is below 10%, but not less than 5%, the product is called carbonated beverage with fruit juice. Okay. So, the total soluble solid in this case should be more than 10%, fruit content in the lime or lime juice should be more than 5%, and fruit content in other fruit juices should be more than 10%. These are the as per the guidelines. For dehydrated vegetables, that is the dehydrated vegetable means the product prepared from edible portion of suitable variety of sound vegetables. It may be whole, sliced, quarters or flaked, kibbled, ground or powdered. The finished product shall have uniform color and shall be free from discoloration due to scorching or enzymatic reactions. The green leafy vegetables, cabbage, okra, garlic, etc., dehydrated, that they must contain fruits moisture about 5 to 8% wet basis. The sulfur dioxide which is used in these fruits or vegetable for preservation should not be higher than 2000 ppm, that is where peroxide test for each dehydrated vegetable must be negative for further acceptance. The fruits and vegetable chutney, they must have TSS greater than 50% and 25% respectively. The fruits and vegetable content in the chutney should be higher than 40%. The pH of the total ash content of fruits and vegetable chutney should not be more than 4.6 and 5% respectively, and similar quality limits are made for mango chutney as well. Okay. Now, let us briefly discuss the major guidelines on spices as per the International Organization for Standards. There are 109 varieties of spices listed in ISO, and out of which 75 varieties are produced in India. The guidelines on spices are made mainly to reduce the foodborne illnesses. Otherwise, these spices, they are considered to be highly prone to support. They support various spoilage as well as pathogenic microorganisms. Although many of the spices, they do contain that antibacterial agents, but still they particularly molds, etc., can grow. So, all materials that are allergens should be labeled with a tag that states allergen, and it should be kept separately. The label can be made bold and bright in color for quick identification. The common allergens in spices are the cereals containing gluten, wheat, rye, barley, oats, spelt are the hybridized strains and products of these, soybean and products of these, peanut, tree, nut and nut products, sesame, celery and mustard, etc. Okay. So, as per the FSSAI guidelines for that dried spices, you can see that the various spices, they are extraneous matter, moisture, total ash, volatile oil and insect damaged matter that has been specified under the guidelines for various spices, dehydrated spices. For example, chili or that cardamom or elaichi, they should not contain extraneous matter, that is less, they should contain less than or equal to 1%. Moisture content should be less than or equal to 13%. Total IS, that is percent dry basis, should be less than 9.5%. Volatile IL should be more than or equal to 3.5%, and insect damaged matter should be more than or equal to less than 1%. Similarly, in the case of cumin seed, that we called Safed Jeera, that it should be less than 3% or equal to 3%. The extraneous matter less than 10%. Moisture, total IS less than or equal to 8%. Volatile IL less than or equal to 1%, and insect damage matter less than is equal to 1%. Also dried garlics, that is lessons, it should have not equal to or less than 0.05% extraneous matter is permitted. Even moisture content should be less than or equal to 8%. Total IS less than or equal to 5%. Volatile IL content percent value by weight should be more than or equal to 0.3. So, various for different spices, dried spices, these limits are prescribed. One may refer the FSSAI guidelines and their, which is available on their website, and other various literatures accordingly. Okay. Then another, in the case of spices, there is a common thing, that is adulteration is a common problem. There are, like for example, in the mustard seeds, that is argemone oil, etc., are added and they look similar. In the chili powder, brick powder, salt powder, artificial colors, etc., in spices ground, that is added starch, powdered bran and sawdust. In the case of salt, their adulteration may be with the talc powder or other impurities. Cinnamon, it can be adulterated with cassia. Okay. Cloves can be mixed with exhausted cloves, etc. Or that is, so that this list is exhaustive, conclusive, and some major thing I have summarized in this table, one can read, but that there are various tests to conduct that to check the adulterations, various measures, but on the consumer level, how you can prevent the consumption of adulterated spices. Number one, check the FSSAI logo and license number on the label of the package of the organic spices. Do not buy powdered spices sold loose. Do not buy spices with extra shine and bright color. Do not buy any spices with unpleasant odors, or do not buy the packaged spices where the damaged their packages are damaged. So, these are the some measures which can be taken at the consumer part. Otherwise, if you find that any sample, if you suspect that it is adulterated, so there is a procedure laid down and you can get it tested and then get those who are doing faulty business that is punished them. There are provisions in the FSSAI guidelines and standards for their punishment. Then permissible composition of different kinds of sugar for use in different products in the fruits and vegetable processing or other products, like the sugars may be khandsari, which is originated from sugarcane juice by open pan process, or jaggery or gur, which is the product obtained by boiling or processing of the juice pressed out of sugarcane, and bura sugar is the very fine grain size products made out of any kind of sugar. So, again in the FSSAI guidelines standards, that is the standards for various different types of sugars like white sugar, refined sugar, khandsari sugar, bura sugar, cube sugar, or gur or jaggery, they are prescribed. For example, that is the moisture content in jaggery or gur should be less than or equal to 7%. Sucrose content should be more than or equal to 70%. Extraneous matter should not be equal to or should be less than or equal to 2%. Total IS should be less than or equal to 6%, and IS insoluble in HCl or acid insoluble IS should be equal to or less than 0.5%. Similarly, in the case of refined sugar, the moisture content should be less than or equal to 0.5%. sucrose should be more than or equal to 99.5% and extraneous matter should be less than or equal to 0.1%. Kandasari sugar, the moisture content is less than or equal to 1.5%, sucrose more than or equal to 93%, extraneous matter less than or equal to 0.25% and acid insoluble as should be less than or equal to 0.7%. Okay. Similarly, the different permissible composition or component or standards for different tea products are made, like whether Kangra tea or normal tea or green tea. And for the FSSAI guideline, Kangra tea, the tea derived from leaves, buds and tender stems of the camellia tea grown in Kangra and Mandi valleys of Himachal Pradesh, whereas the other tea, that is the tea other than the Kangra, is obtained from the leaves, buds and tender stems of plants of the Camellia sinensis. Green tea is the product derived solely by, notably by the enzyme inactivation, rolling, drying from the leaves, buds and tender stems of the species of the Camellia sinensis. Okay. So, the content various standard like total as percentage mass by mass in the tea, general tea should be in the range of 4 to 8%. In the Kangra tea, it is recommended 4.5 to 9%, and in the green tea, it is 4 to 8%. Then water soluble as or acid insoluble as or even crude fiber, iron filings, etc. These are the prescribed standards for these are set, and some of these values are given here in this table. You can see. Similarly, some permissible components or guidelines or standards for the different coffee products, and in the coffee product for the FSSAI, some chicory powder is permitted to be mixed. Chicory means that is roasted chicory powder, which is obtained by roasting and grinding of the cleaned and dried roots of Chicorium invitus. Okay. And here the moisture content, total as, water soluble as, alkali soluble as, aqueous extracts or caffeine content is all again specified in the standards. For example, caffeine should be more than or less than or equal to 1% in the coffee, that is the green, raw and unroasted. Okay. And similarly, this moisture content should be less than or equal to 5% in the coffee. Okay. And less than or equal to 4% in the decaffeinated soluble coffee powder. Okay. Total as should be less than or equal to 1.2% in the case of soluble coffee powder or decaffeinated coffee powder, and it should be less than or equal to 7.5% in the case of coffee chicory mixture, or less than or equal to 10 in the case of instant coffee chicory mixture. So, various standards are accordingly fixed in the law. Similarly, the permissible composition or standards of the different kinds of chocolate, that is the permitted vegetable fats in the chocolates are mahua oil, gurgi kokum, salt, mango kernel, oil from palms, etc. Standard for the vegetable fats to be mixed in the chocolates are the vegetable fat has to be non-lauric, rich in symmetrical monounsaturated triglycerides, and must fall in that POP like palmitic, oleic, palmitic acid, stost, that is stearic, stearic acid, or post, that is palmitic, oleic and stearic acid categories. Okay. So, the content of that is the characteristics of the milk chocolate, milk covering chocolate, plain covering chocolate, white chocolate and blended chocolate, total fat percentage, milk fat percentage, cocoa solids, milk solids or acid insoluble as, all these are specified. Like in all the cases, total fat should be more than or equal to 25%. Okay. Or this your acid insoluble as should be less than or equal to 0.2% in all these cases of chocolate. Okay. And other there are little variations. Milk solids percentage In the case of milk chocolate and milk covering chocolate, should be more than or equal to 10.5%. In white chocolate, more than equal to 10.5%, and in blended chocolate it should be in the range of 1 to 9%. Okay. Now, let us discuss about food safety management system, FSMS. That is FSMS is a network of interrelated elements that combine to ensure that the food does not cause any adverse human health, okay, when it is eaten. And these elements include programs, plans, policies, procedures, practices. That is, all these things, everything should be done, whether it is at the manufacturer level, at the regulator level, or at the company, that company management, quality, personnel, etc., even record keeping, and so on. So, anyway, this FSMS enables organizations to demonstrate their ability to control food safety standards, to demonstrate compliance to statutory and regulatory management requirements, evaluate process and meet customer requirements, communicate food safety information throughout the food chain, enable evaluation and updation of the system, and ensure food is safe at the time of consumption, human consumption. It is important that food should be safe at the time of consumption. Okay. So, there are key elements to ensure food safety are that there should be proper interactive communication. Okay. That is where that human machines, they all act properly there to ensure that food safety, everything should be possible done. Then management element or system, it manages one or more specific types of telecommunication network, etc. in the element. Then good manufacturing practices, that is, these are the procedures that should be followed during plant construction as well as operation of the plant to ensure food wholesomeness or to ensure production of safe food. Then hazard analysis and HACCP, that is, HACCP defines control of specific hazards in manufacturing, processing, or that is handling processes. Then operational prerequisite programs, PRPs, these are the programs that are put in place in facility to control hazards in environment, preventing contaminations of products, and so on. Okay. So, the different hazards, that is hazards analysis and critical control point, that is it recommend approach to control the possibility of any toxic contaminations or any hazardous matters present in the food. Okay. This approach has significant benefit to organizations operating within the food supply chain, as it enables them to determine key control over processes and concentrate resources on activities that are critical to ensuring a safe food. The food may contain hazards like physical hazards, chemical hazard, or microbiological hazard, and every possible effort should be taken to control these hazards or minimize these hazards. And there are 7 principles of HACCP protocol, that is according to which, that first is the analyze the hazards, okay, whether physical, biological, chemical, etc., whatever, and then identify the critical control point in the process chain or in the value chain, establish the critical limit, establish monitoring process, establish corrective action, establish a verification procedure, and finally establish record keeping and document practices. So, these are the 7 steps of the HACCP implementation protocol. Okay. So, the various physical hazards, you all know that they relate to the various foreign particles not normally found in the product. The nature of the physical hazards in the food chain is rather different from the nature of the other hazards, and besides, compared with the chemical or microbiological hazards, physical hazards are less likely to affect the large number of people, and various physical sources of the hazards are given here in this slide. Then the chemical hazard it is important to differentiate between the residues such as pesticides, growth promoters, veterinary medicines, contaminants such as dioxin, then PCBs or heavy metals, etc., which might be there in the food. They might be there is a causes for the chemical hazards or the microbiological hazards. It will be bacteria, yeast, protozoa, mold, viruses, anything which come in contact with the food, fruit, vegetable or food during the production or post production, they may create hazards. Okay, various species like Clostridium or Salmonella, Shigella, Campylobacter, etc., Escherichia coli, and so on. They are there. Then, in contrast to the chemical hazard, the microbiological hazards, they are caused by the living organisms. So, all these things would be taken care of. So, here it is the HACCP process for vegetables, vegetable processing, that is where that is in the value chain starting from the receiving until it goes the storage and shipping here. That is where the biological hazard, where the chemical hazard are important, or where the physical hazards are there, that these are the indicated by BCP, and in the whole value chain, like particularly where the CCP, where one should take care, critical control point, that is the also is shown. So, HACCP analysis of fruits and vegetable contains first receiving of the raw material, followed by its chemical storage, or sometimes even direct packaging. So, they are inspected, washed, cut into pieces, and finally moisture is removed, okay, following by mixing, etc. So, at each and every stage, that is appropriate measures should be taken to check the hazards. Some points in the value chain, particularly which are vulnerable to allow the growth of microorganisms, etc., those may become, or if we are, for example, sterilizing a product, okay, so here it is a CCP, critical control point, to check that the pressure condition or heat condition or other sterilants, etc., are properly maintained. So, that becomes critical control point, other may become normal price. So, here in this tables I have given the details of hazards in processing of fruits and vegetable juices, etc., that is starting from the receiving of the fruit till it goes in storage, cleaning, belt washing, peeling, etc. Where are what might be the various types of physical contamination or chemical contamination, biological contamination, etc. Like for example, in the peeling, there may be presence of metal pieces, etc., that is peeling knives, etc., which you are ready to, if it is old knives, that are even chemical contamination come from the chemicals, or pesticides in the washing, etc., or contamination due to unclean equipment, unclean utensils, etc., may be biological contamination. Similarly, each and every stage there are, like in pulping, mixing, holding, or in the thermal processing, as I told you, that it may be physical contamination, may be from the unsanitized equipment, chemical contamination may be from the sanitizer residue, or biological contamination may be microbial survivor due to insufficient temperature or holding time. So, these are similarly packaging also. So, various stages, what are the various sources from which different contamination and hazards may come, and accordingly here in this table I give the measures, what are the various measures should be taken to control these hazards. So, the CP, control the hazard CP, or the critical control point, what are the in the process, in the value chain. For example, in the you see again from receiving to storage, cleaning, etc., in all these cases, that is the different measures what should be done, like when you are storing, just visual interception, okay, and biological hazards, maintain the ideal storage conditions. Okay. In the case of peeling, again precaution for the maintenance, screens, these magnet downstreams, etc., in the it will prevent the physical hazards, okay, and these precautions for cleaning, sanitizing equipment, etc., will prevent the biological hazards. So, and all these things, of course, CP. So, you have to follow appropriate practice, appropriate cleaning, sanitization, and other practices, use proper procedures, and maintain that there is no contamination, etc., and whatever there is properly checked. But here you see again pulping, mixing, holding, all these there, but in the thermal processing it is a CCP, as I told you, it is a critical control point, like temperature, pressure, etc., should be properly maintained, so that the desired whatever objective there of that sterilization or pasteurization, that is achieved. And in other cases you have to properly maintain the conditions to check that there is no contamination or etc. Okay. Here it is the HACCP again for the spice processing, starting from the harvesting and transporting till it is storage, packed, dried or Plantation, the various phase. And here it contains harvesting and transportation, and these spices after harvesting they are washed, stored for getting optimum quality, followed by seed removal. Then seedless spices are dried in oven at industrial scale or sun drying at a small scale. The dried spices are grounded and checked for the presence of aflatoxin, etc. Ground spices are packaged in stored in bulk, and finally the packaged spices are shipped. And you can see here in different stages, that is the CCP1, CCP2, CCP3, that is are there, that each and every step here one has to for the spices, because they may likely be contaminated very often if the standards are not followed, proper conditions are not followed. So here this CCP should be maintained, that is shown in the. Then again in the case of spices also, the measures to control hazards and critical control points in spice processing in the various stages. For example, in the drying, the potential hazards may be fungus growth, or it may be the hazards may be from soil, from material, or contaminations of aflatoxin, etc. So the preventive measures should be taken, that is the direct contact with the soil, etc. should be prevented. Okay. Personal hygiene, the people those who are using drying, they are involved, they should maintain personal hygiene. Good manufacturing, good drying practices should be found, and then the drying up particularly for paper should be made as soon as possible using all the necessary protocols. So these are the various CCPs that it is described in detail in these tables. You can refer this. Similarly in the storage, packaging, or transport, etc. for the spices, various stages. Like in the transport, if other cases it is the critical control points, in the transport as well as in the receipt, these are the CP control point measures to control this. Finally, the HACCP of the chocolate processing. Okay. That is, in this chocolate, we had in the earlier class we have discussed what are the different methods of the chocolate manufacture, how it is starting from the cocoa beans until making the bar. So in this particularly the roasting, it becomes a CCP, because it facilitates the production of this flavor of the bean, and also it destroyed the contaminating microorganisms, etc. So there is the CCP1. Then CCP2, very necessary, that is in the environment where this process is done, that is also there should be maintained. And then mixing also with the CCP2, because the rye materials are the rework, etc. everything, that it should be proper sanitary conditions should be maintained. So that is the HACCP of the chocolate processing. So in the brief, so I will summarize this lecture by saying that yes, proper implementation of the FSMS guidelines are very important to ensure safety and quality of the food products. And government of India, as I told you, in India, that is the food safety and standard authorities are has the power to decide the guidelines and safety standards. But let me tell you, these guidelines and safety guidelines or standards, etc. setting these are always a dynamic process. So even from time to time they have the scientific panel, scientific committee, etc. They consider these regulations, and once depending upon the situation, etc. guidelines are fixed, the standards are fixed, and even if there is a need, they say again the committee even they bring about amendments, etc. So for details I recommend that yes, you should consult the FSSAI guidelines, but it is a mandatory that all business operators, manufacturers, etc. they must follow FSSAI guidelines, and which is prescribed for the particular product or commodity which they are doing. Okay. And for getting FSSAI license, etc. the very simple procedures are there, details are described on the FSSAI websites. Also there are written documents and printed documents are available here for this purpose. So everyone should follow, but the end point is that one should clearly, that is guidelines and standards, and one should ensure that the product which you are bringing to the market, because it is the life of the human consumers are involved. So, it should be wholesome and it should be free from any contaminations. It should have a good quality standard. It should be safe to consume, and for that guidelines should be strictly followed to maintain the standard, follow good hygienic practices, good manufacturing practices, and so on. So, these are the references used in this lecture. Thank you very much for your patience hearing. Thank you.